So Tim and I we're talking a couple months ago, I think, and we were talking about showing tools, and I said, well, I got a bunch of hollowing tools, different kind of systems that I've used, and somehow that turned into me doing this demo. So yeah, you bet. I thought I'd just talk a little bit about kind of the evolution. So I probably started almost over 15 years ago. I've had 4 different lathes, and each time I wish I would have bought the one I have now, right? But I was too cheap to buy it in the first place. So I started out, I'm a wood carver. So I used to do ducks and birds, and I needed a base to put my songbirds on. So I bought a lathe at Fleet Farm. It was a little, I don't even know what it was called. It was tiny, and I made little bases, and those little bases were what I would put my bird carvings on. And once I started working on the lathe, I thought, this is pretty cool. I kind of like this more than the carving. And so took a class down in Appleton. It was a 3-week class, and learned how to make a bowl. And then from there, I thought I needed a bigger lathe. So eventually went to a Powermatic. That's what I use now. But the same kind of progression happened in terms of the types of hollowing that I did. And so probably for the first 4 or 5 years, I did almost all bowls and some boxes, but I didn't do any kind of hollowing or end grain turning. And so as I started to get into that, I started out small, again, had a small lathe. And so my first hollowing stuff started out just being little ornaments, right? Like probably 20 different kinds of ornaments, but I hollowed those out. And again, kind of cheap. So, and I'm just gonna talk more about tools today than I am gonna actually demo how to do a project. But my first tool was an Allen wrench that I put in a handle. And that was how I did my ornaments, the inside of them. And so from there, I continued to kind of work along, and I bought Benjamin Best, had a hollowing set, and it had 3 tools in it, and I used one for a while, and I tried another one, and the other 2 were terrible, and I would get a catch and couldn't hang on to them, real short handles, and so I really struggled with that. And so then went up and got bigger stuff. Went to the Robert Sorby. So they have a couple of different kinds of cutters for Sorby. And again, it's a cutter that has so it's a flat bar that sits on your tool rest. And so that helps you not have the twist in the thing. But again, in my mind at this point, a real short handle. And so the torque on it, if you get off center too far, the torque on it is pretty high. They had a swan neck one, I think that I sold here a few years ago to somebody in one of our swaps one spring. But that was my next set of tools. And then I eventually went to, so I'm just gonna show this. I don't know that they make them commercially. This is a tool that I was given as a gift. So it was a turner. I'll show this one. This is I have different sizes. Now, sorry, I'm not sure how you're seeing things here, but it sits on the tool rest, and that second bar provides the fulcrum for you. So there's no twist to it. You're just holding it, and it holds itself. It keeps it steady. And so again, that's kind of the theme of where I went, is bigger and steadier in ways of trying to kind of hold it. So I'll come back and I'll show a couple of these tools, and I'll talk about a few more of them. I'm just going to start out then, or now talk a little bit about the process that I use for hollowing. And it started out, again, I was using ornaments, so I was doing real tiny holes to get through. And I thought that was pretty cool. I ended up reading David Ellsworth's book on making hollow forms. That was what I was most interested in his book. And so I started doing a lot of things with small openings. One of the things that I don't have I didn't think this through, but I have a whole bunch of slides or pictures that I got together for today, and didn't think to call Jerry to see if it was an option or how to put it together. So I had some demos or some ideas to show you on video that or clips that I can't show you. So anyway, so I start out the hollowing process typically by drilling a hole down the center. And I didn't used to do that, but when I started doing those hollow turnings, and again, I don't have the picture for this because I show a couple that blew up on me. But when you do those hollow turnings through a small hole and you're getting to the bottom, you get a little point or nipple that ends up in the bottom. And Ellsworth has it, you know, he describes it and it's really nice and you get all relaxed and you cut it away, and I never got that relaxed. I was holding on for dear life. And then if you hit it just right, it bounces your tool right off the tool rest and you blow up whatever you're working on. So after hours of working on something, you might blow that up. And so for me, I just started drilling a hole in the bottom because now I've got my middle and I don't have that problem. I'm not catching that. Now, I say that, and a couple months ago, I did the same thing with the problem in the bottom. And again, don't have pictures to show you kind of what those look like. But my hollow forms probably started out in this size as the biggest that I would do with some of the hollowing tools that I have, and I would close up that hole. And again, today I'm not showing, you know, how I would create the outside form. That wasn't my intention. It was really just talking about how I use it. So I'm just going to drill a hole. I did some blanks today. Actually thought I've got a system here that I'm assuming most people haven't tried, and I put a couple blanks together thinking that if afterwards people wanted to try it out, the system that I am currently using, that they could come up and just give it a whirl while we're here. So, all right, let's go here. So I'm just gonna get a hole drilled here. And when I'm drilling out that hole, I'm not typically using a Forstner bit because the stuff that I do now is significantly deeper than this. And again, I apologize, I can't show you that. But I've got a big steady rest, and I'm doing things that are 12 to 17 inches long. And so I'm often using a long boring drill similar to this. And again, just so that I can get more depth in it. There are pros and cons to some of this, and I'll talk a little bit about that too as I kind of get back to the deeper hollowing and how that works. So I'm typically just drilling out a hole. Obviously, with this wet wood, it heats up fast, and so it clogs quite a bit. It's why I like those auger bits. Oh, and there we go. Oh no, I hit that with my leg. I do not have a remote switch, but that would be really brilliant for me to put one on, because when I'm hollowing and I'm standing out here with my tool and something goes wrong, it's a long way to get to the button. And I keep thinking about it, but I'm assuming some of you might be retired. I am not, so I'm a very occasional turner. I probably turn about maybe twice a month if I'm lucky. So I'm not spending a lot of time in the shop, and when I'm in the shop, then I'm trying to go faster, if that makes sense. I don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm going too fast sometimes. All right, so I'm just going to stop there. I'm not going to, again, not trying to get really deep. I'm going to pull this out. And just show you and the work that I've done, or the types of things that I've made, have also kind of evolved with the tools that I'm using. So typically for me at home, again, I have the Powermatic. And so I'm often sliding the headstock all the way down here so that I'm not turning at the side of it, I'm turning off the end. It's just more comfortable for me to stand, and it's a better spot for me to be. And so I would say typically I'm hollowing here at the end, but only if I'm doing something deep. So this tool also was the first thing I had that measured the depth of my stuff. And so pull this measuring thing out. I'll explain it in a second, but not relevant to showing just how the tool works. But again, as I'm looking at this tool, it is a scraper. So I'm putting a burr on this edge, and then it's flat. And I guess I didn't think about this. It won't work on this big a tool or on this big a space. This demo may be way shorter than I thought it was going to be. Nope, can't do it. Well, I can do it. I just need to make an adjustment here. All right, bear with me for a second. Will that reach? All right, I'm just going to make it, looks like. And so again, I would typically not have this swing way out here. It would be here because I would be on a smaller vessel. And I do have, so this came as a gift. I think I said this already, but my stepdad started turning after I did, but he was retired, so he spent a lot more time doing it than I did. And so he bought me both of these, 2 different sizes. And I will tell you that, I don't know if they show up, but this is the one that I used almost exclusively. I really like this one. It's beefier and I can get a long way. But the gentleman who made it, in my opinion, this could have been about another 4 inches long, because the depth that I could get from it was not much greater than this. And so again, I go to this one. I still use this tool because I don't have to do any setup. I'm going to show you some setups on some different systems, but I don't have to do any setup with this. I just grab it and go. And again, it's just a scraper. And so, what's that? Yeah, it's limited by this. So that's the deepest I can go on any particular. And again, what's nice about this is I can adjust the cutter, and I have probably about 6 different kinds of cutters that I've used on here. And so now I'm just cutting that, and I can get inside and not be able, not have to see where I am inside of there. And so if I go back to this system and just take a look at, in theory, how it would work. So I'm turning the cutter to whatever position I want it to. And then this is just a spring-loaded depth gauge. And so as I'm out on the edge here, this spring is riding along. I really didn't think this part through, but this spring is riding along, and it'll start to bend. And when it straightens out, I'm at the depth that I want. And that works great when I was on the front end of the tool. But when I got down near the bottom, there were a few times that didn't work so well because the angle was different, and I ended up cutting through the bottom. So eventually I got to a point where I didn't use this anymore. And some of the guys who have this tool continue to use it and have figured out they're smarter than I am when they get to the bottom, apparently, and they're not cutting their stuff apart. But I also went to, and again, this is one that's here at the school, but I just went to another depth gauge to figure out where I was, right? So I'm holding this on the inside, and I'm watching how far away I am, and I'm trying to keep a consistent depth. And that became the way I did it probably for 5 or 6 years. That's how I measured everything I did. And it worked, but it's slow. So I I don't have much time in the shop. So when I get in the shop, I want to get something done. So I'm always looking for how do I do it faster. So from these tools, I went up, I bought tools from John Jordan. So John Jordan is a hollower, and if you take a look at his stuff, he does a lot of ornamental stuff where he's carving it. And again, I started out as a carver, so I was really intrigued by his work. And then, of course, I thought I should buy his tool. And so I do a lot of those. They're probably about this size, maybe a little shorter. They usually have a small hole at the top, and then I'm carving some kind of ornamental stuff in them. So those I'm leaving pretty thick. And again, I'm not overly concerned about how I measure the wall thickness. But what I really liked about these tools is they come with a handle, and I can make this longer or shorter by sliding it into the handle. But they were beefy enough for me to get under my arm and next to my body. So when I'm out here turning, and here I'm a little bit, and I'm hitting the switch with my leg again. But out here, and so this became my favorite tool. I used this for several years and feel like I could really, it was fast. And it's the same thing, but in my mind, it's still a scraper. But I can go both directions. I can go back and forth. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time. But one of the things I noticed when I did that is my shavings are pretty small. And so again, it's a scraping cut. And so I can get I haven't used this tool in quite a while, but I could get a little better with it if I twisted it a little and had the right angle. I was getting a little better cut. And I still use this tool at times just to hog out the front end of something. And again, when I was talking about drilling, if I'm doing a 17-inch vase, my auger drill bit is about 12 inches long. So I might hollow out the front 4 or 5 inches to a point where I can get the entire, the Jacobs chuck, further into the vessel and drill that bottom or that center hole all the way through. And so I used this for years. There are 3 different tools that Jordan has with his system or with his, the second one is a bent tool, and that's going to do right inside the front of the lip where I'm working. And then there's another, it's just a different angle on the bend, which is better for doing the bottom. And so that system or those sets of tools are what I used for a long time. And again, I was still measuring with my wire. And I probably have half a dozen of these different sizes that I'm using for measuring the depth. Yes. Yep. And so they're replaceable. They have a set screw on the bottom, and you can pull them out. That's typically I would pull them out to sharpen them. I tried sharpening a few times with them in, but then nicked my bar, so that seemed like a bad idea. So I learned that sometimes I have to slow down instead of trying to do everything faster. So anyway, so this is the kind of system that I had set up for years. And at one point, while I was standing here, I actually think it was Mark and Cleet and I'm trying to think of the guy who was our president before, Kelly. And we were talking about hollowing, and Kelly said, well, you can't cheat. You got to learn how to hollow. And I was like, well, I kind of believe that. I want to figure out and learn what I'm doing. But after working with the Jordan tools, then I went to a captured or an articulated arm system. And I'm showing you this because I also want to show you how easy it is to use. So this is a captured or a articulated arm system. This is something called a gizmo. That was the name of the thing. And the gentleman who made these has passed away, and his system is no longer being made. But this is similar to Trent Bosch's system. There's another guy, Sorry, I'm a wood turning junkie, and when I'm not turning, I'm watching videos or researching. Tim Yoder is another guy who does sell an articulated arm system. I'm not sure that they're quite um, as robust as this one. I need to find. So this is a system where, I don't know if you can show that from overhead. This is a system that has a series of knuckles in it, or joints, so that I can change the angle. Sorry, I grab my Allen wrench here. I can find where I put them. So this has got a series of joints with it that I can change the angle of where my cutter is. It also has two different size cutters, and those cutters go in, and you can adjust the angle on the cutter as well, but they are set at an angle also so that they're not straight up and down. And these are high-speed cutters. And so as I graduated to this system, and when I say graduated, I still use some of the older tools that I have as well. But when I went to this system, what I also liked about it is there's a hole here on the system that I was able to put a laser. So there's a set tapped hole here, and so I could put a laser system in here, and that laser system became how I then measured the depth of my wall, or the thickness of my wall. And so again, this captured arm system has a lot of play to it. It's very mobile. It moves really well. And the cutter was cutting. And so what I liked about it is, well, I'm not showing you that right now. And I didn't change my cutter and put a new or a fresh one in there, so I may have it, I don't know when the last time I used this is. But it started cutting faster, and so what I was able to do is hollow things out quicker, and there wasn't much to it. It's literally by hand. It moves really simply. So I want to talk a little bit, and again, I don't know how many of you hollow things, but if I think about hollowing, and I don't know if you can see this from here, but when I hollow a vessel, I didn't come up with this, I just read this when I did the David Ellsworth, but if I drill my hole down, that's not wide enough for me to get in and do any work. So my first path, the first thing that I do is I'm cutting a hole straight down the vessel. So I'm coming all the way down inside. And then I'm peeling out parts at a time. So this would be number one. This would be the second section I go to. If it's a big curve here, I'm maybe not going to go as deep, but I'm trying to create a pocket for those shavings to come out of. Because when you have a small little hole, the shavings build up in there really quickly, especially in the front end of it, but it gets hot. And so then they bind, and it can go bad, and you can blow up a vessel. And again, you know how I know that, but so then you're just kind of peeling out different sections. And I'm working my way down the bowl as I go. And so what I liked about this system was that I could get any angle that I wanted by adjusting the bearings or the joints that were on it. And again, so the cutting was pretty quick. And with the laser, you can see where you're going. And I apologize, because again, I had kind of pictures that I could show you how this worked. I didn't want to, feel like I brought a quarter of my shop along, and I didn't want to bring it all. But that laser then is coming up above, and it's pointing down. And as I got near the edge, the laser will fall off, or you can go to it right on the edge of your wood. And when it's on the edge of your wood, then you're going to be able to tell how thick your wall is. And again, I use that similar to the other device that I talked about, the little spring. You had to adjust that laser. If you adjust your cutter, you need to move the laser. If you don't, you're going to end up cutting through again. And so, again, just wanted to show you options, and I'm going to show you the real thing that I kind of wanted to demo that might be different, and I'm assuming most of you. So this is a carbide cutter, and it is a cutter that is, I think it's a Hunter, is the first one I saw. And the multiple sizes of cutters allow you to, so this has got a 10 millimeter and a 6 millimeter. And so I would use different ones depending on the kind of wood that I was using, or what kind of, if I had a gnarly piece that had knots in it, I often would go with a smaller cutter, have to be a little more patient, go a little slower. So anyway, this system that is set up, you adjust to the height of your lathe and you hit your center point. And once you have it adjusted, that's it. So it took me, 2 minutes to put it in and tighten it down, and now the system is in place. With this system, I also was able to get a couple different size bars. So that one I think was a ½ inch, and this one is a full inch. And so the design for this one was square, and the theory behind it was that the square would be more stable and give you more support, less vibration. And I could go a 10, 12-inch vessel with this off the end of the tool rest, no problem. It's beefy, and it was easy to use. I liked it. So don't ask me why I went to this next one. I don't have a great reason, although I'm a little bit of a tool junkie and wood turning is my thing. So then I went to another system, and the system that I purchased, I got from a place called Advance. I have to look it up so I don't screw it up. Advanced Lathe Tools. And Steve Sinner, great guy, was helpful for me as I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And again, I didn't need another system, right? I had been hollowing for years with these, and I do almost all vases and hollow forms now. I don't do many bowls. Sorry, grab a drink quick. Through my double microphone. So Steve has a system, and at this point in my demo, the picture I would show you is the first piece I bought. So my dad passed away, and I thought, I should do something cool to remember my dad. I'm going to buy myself a really fancy tool. And so I went out, and I had been researching turning tools for years. And around the time I bought the Jordan tool, I found a hollowing tool called a Monroe. And a Monroe, I think his name is Raleigh, I think his first name, Raleigh Monroe, has a turning tool. And I'm going to send it around while I set up, just so you can see what it's like. But it is a carbide cutter, but it has a cap over the top. The cap adjusts the depth of your cutter. Is that easier to show? Oh, there we go. And I'll pass this around just so you can see what it looks like. So I'm thinking I'm going to buy myself one more tool. So I keep wanting to get bigger. So I bought myself this system with a 6.5 foot bar, right? So I'm 6 feet tall. It comes to here. It is 1.25 inch steel, solid, 2 pipes welded together. It weighs 48 pounds. That's my hollowing bar at home. So I bought this in, I think, I want to say maybe February of last year. And then my wife and I found a new house that we moved into. and it didn't have a workshop. So I went from a workshop that was about a car and a half garage into about a 12 by 9 foot space. And my 6-foot bar no longer fits unless I go out the door. So if I'm being honest, I used that about 3 times before I moved, and I haven't used it yet. But it's just the picture of it is humorous because I'm holding it and it's, you know, above my head, but it's so beefy. So, but what I liked when I started using it was this cutter that I'm sending around, and so the system, there's a Lyle Jamison makes a trap system that's here at the school. I've seen it in the back room. And that system has something similar to this. And then if you take a look at this tool, and maybe you know what Lyle Jamison's are, but it's got 2 bars on it, similar to this. So it's flat inside here, so it can't move. Steve Sinner's system is just the welded bars together. And again, so this is the small that he sells. He has 4 different sizes. So he has 4 different sizes, and again, I brought along just a price sheet if people are interested in looking at it or what kind of things he has. I'll send that around too. But again, if you think about this, this bar is not even half the width of the one that I have, and the other bar's about this long at 1.25 inches. So what's different about this one is you use the tool rest as to hold the trap, and you needed either another tool rest or another piece to go with it. And so Steve also makes a support for the bar, and that is what I'm putting on here. And so again, if I wasn't yakking so much, the setup of this, the first setup takes some time, probably 20 minutes, but after that, the setup takes about 5 minutes to get to a hollowing spot. And one of the other problems with a 49-pound, 6.5-foot bar, it's pretty hard to balance. So I have an extension on my lathe that's about 1.5 feet. So it comes out to here. So now my bar is back here. And once I'm too far back, I needed something behind me. So I have another stand that sits behind and helps hold that bar. So again, that was maybe a drawback. So the way this works then is this is going to come through. I'm going to make a couple of adjustments here to get it so that it's not unlevel. But again, if I'm talking about another 3.5 off of the end there, this would be flipped at this point. So with Steve's system, it comes with a carbide cutter, very similar to the one I showed you last time, or at the last tool, but it's pretty small. I think this is also a 6mm cutter. And there are times when I still have to use this, and I probably shouldn't have sent around the one I wanted to show because I probably need it back. Can I grab the cutter back wherever it is? So he has 3 different pieces that come with it. And the Monroe cutter was extra. It was extra cost. You can see it on there. And then it also has a bar with a scraper on it. So if I want to smooth out the inside, once I'm done with my cutting, I can do that. So I need my Allen wrench here. Wrong size. So in addition to not giving Jerry a call and asking about putting pictures up, the other thing I wasn't prepared for until late last night was wood. What am I going to use to show you how this works? I have a guy up in Door County who typically I get my wood from, and I thought I was going to get some from yesterday, and that didn't pan out. So about 8:30 last night, I ran out and took an old log and cut it up. And I thought I'd bring really nice green wood for you, just because it always looks prettier, right, when you're getting big long ribbons. But I'm fairly confident we'll do okay here. Now, when I'm using this cutter, the Monroe, so Monroe's doesn't sell his in a system like this. Monroe sells his with just a handle, similar to that Jordan handle that I had before. And that the benefit with the handle is that you can adjust the angle a little better than you can on this captured system. But the process here, and it's not giving me great shavings at this point. Well, it would help if I tighten that down. I found with this system, and again, when I was talking about I want to be able to go fast, I can hog out. I'm getting much bigger shavings than I was. And this goes both. So when I'm typically hollowing, sorry, I'm a little nervous, obviously. And so when I'm typically hollowing, I'm only going with those other tools towards the side of the wall. With this system, I can go both directions fairly easily and fairly quickly. And so if I keep going here, I didn't want to try and do something with a small hole because you can't actually see what's happening with the cutter. But this cutter is much more aggressive, much faster than any of the other systems that I've tried. And greenwood, I'm actually peeling off long shavings of it. So there's a pro and a con to that, because if I'm inside of a hollow vessel with a small hole, 2 swipes in the beginning and I'm full, and I got to blow it out with air to come back. And again, so this system also has a threaded thing for a laser, and Steve sells a laser that goes with that. Again, missing about 5 slides to show you what I use at home. But in a conversation with Cleet and Mark and Carrie, like I was talking about before, these guys said, well, we use a camera. I'm like, what do you mean you use a camera? So they explained to me what they did, and I went home and went online and bought a camera. So I have a little teeny tiny camera that's mounted to, I got 2 bars, one's coming up here, one's at a cross angle. And I've got a camera that's pointing down at top of my cutter. And now I've got a TV monitor or a computer monitor that's on my wall. And I was going to show you pictures of this so you can get a better picture or get a better idea of what I do. But right in front of me, right where that camera is, on my wall in my shop is a mounted computer screen. And so I reach right across there, and I can just draw a picture around on the screen. It's got a little protection over it so I can wipe it off, but I have a dry erase marker, and I draw a picture of my cutter on it. And then I start out and I get the depth that I want inside my vessel. So I'm coming over here, and again, I never turn. So I'm going to get to the wall thickness that I want. And I was going to show you pictures of this too. So the last three things that I did are about 10 or 12 inches long, and they're about 1/8 inch thick. And so I turned those green, and I turned them all the way down, and my goal with those is to be able to paint and pierce them. So they're drying on a shelf, and I had a picture of those three. But what I'll do is cut to the thickness that I want, back to the screen, and I just put a line where that wall is. And Trent Bosch has a little, it's like a little, looks like a credit card, but it's got a little diagram on it that tells you how wide your cut is. I didn't find that to be completely accurate because it depends on how high my camera is. But what it does is it just gives me a perfect circle to go back around my cutter and mark out what I do. And so now, no matter where I'm in the vessel, I know exactly where I'm at in terms of the distance and the side of the wall. So I'm going to make one quick adjustment here, and I'll hollow a little bit more. And again, in my mind, part of what I was thinking was that this might be, that people might be interested in just kind of getting a feel for what this, right, for me, for turning is, how does the tool feel? That's, right, I'm trying to figure that out and learn that. And again, with the Jordan, that was why I liked it. It had a long handle, I could tuck it in. And with this one, it took a little bit to get used to, but I can hollow out things now probably about 1/4 of the time that I used to hollow things out. And part of that is having the camera and not stopping and checking every few inches or every inch or 1/4 inch down the pike. And one is this system that is just hollowing out much faster. So I would be able to hollow this out in probably half an hour to get the thickness that I want and to go all the way down at the end of this vase. Obviously I'm presenting. I feel like I'm just standing up here rambling. Anybody have any questions?
A couple of times you talked about not long enough handles early on in the system.
Yep.
Is there kind of correlation between depth and handle length? As far as you were doing ornaments at first, I'm assuming those are 3-4 inches, and you don't need a 6-foot bar.
Correct.
Right now I'm at about 7 inches. I don't have articulating or anything captured. I just have an extended rest that I lay everything
Inside.
Yeah.
Yep.
Iron gauge or something. So my handles are just normal length. I mean, if I bought longer handles, do I get deeper, or do I have to go to articulated?
I don't think you have to go to articulated or a captured bar system. I mean, again, I made a lot of things that I liked with those two, with these. I enjoyed it. I did it because I'm just intrigued about new tools. I thought one day I should just call all the companies that make hollowing tools and I should do reviews for them and tell everybody which one was better, but I didn't call anybody, so. No, it doesn't have one, but it doesn't need it because it's captured, because this is keeping it flat for me. And so when you're turning, the part that becomes a challenge is when you're hooked in, when that catches, you're holding it with your hand. And so again, if I could tuck it into my body, like I do with my bowl gouge or my other tools, then I felt more confident that I could hold it. Again, I've done some, probably not ornaments, but small little vases. I've had a small tool catch in my hand and just rip it right out of my hand, so it's flopping around, down at the end of the tool. And so here, it can't do that because it's just laying flat. And again, so that for me was great. And again, this captured system, it's extra welded on bar that keeps it from being able to twist. No. Well, because I also can't now get in, my hole has to be at least the diameter of, it's got to be probably about 1/4 inch bigger than the diameter of my bar. And so Uh, the deepest one I've done so far was a 17-inch vase. The end is not, it's not a, so a hollow form in my mind is closed up here, and I've got a small opening that I'm going through. So when I'm doing the deeper stuff, I mean, I'm still looking for a decent size opening. Even if I'm closing it back up at the end, I'm not trying to go through a small opening. I've got some other examples. I'm all out of whack with where I thought I would go, but here's a piece that I did. Somebody brought in a hunk of wet maple, I don't know, 2 months ago at one of our meetings. And I got it off the table in the raffle, and this is it. And so, again, that one I did with my bigger bar. So, but it's got a nice big opening. So your original question was, is there maybe a ratio? Somebody who's smart and knows math might know that. 5 to 1. So I want 5 inches of handle for every inch I'm off the tool rest. Yeah, and again, I think you're talking, Ed, you got something that's going inside that's giving you that tool rest support. So now you're not going to have that same vibration or bouncing around that you would get. Sure. Yep. And I think all of that makes a difference. The Gizmo, the articulated arm system that I used, that one has square bars, and I think that helps. But ironically, it fits my John Jordan tools. It's the same diameter, and I use those in there all the time in the beginning because I just liked those tools and knew how they worked. And those are round bars. But if I'm on a round bar on the tool rest versus a flat bar, there's more torque. And so again, I like deep. I just want now decide I want to go bigger. So right, I wanted the bar that I have at home. Mike Sinner or Steve Sinner says I can go 33 inches deep. Remember, my shop's not long enough. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet, but it's still my goal, right, to get deeper than this. And I've done some things that are deeper than that. But again, so one of the things I've been doing a lot lately is turning wet wood. And so there are things that are really important to do when you're turning wet wood. One is to make sure that you keep the thickness the same. Okay. So I can pass this around, or you can come and take a peek, but it is much thinner at the top. So this is another piece that I got here, I think, again, maybe last month, or, well, it was before the Final Four, or during the NCAA tournament, because the Badgers were playing, and I was supposed to go to my brother-in-law's, and it was the weekend. You were supposed to move the clocks. Well, I didn't move the clock in my workshop, and my wife came in saying, hey, it's time to go. And I was like, oh, I'm close enough at the bottom. It should be okay. And by the next day, it had already started to split. So clearly, wall thickness is important. So again, these are just other thoughts that I had. I had a whole outline, and I got nervous enough I forgot about everything that I was going to cover. I was here, and at one point somebody was talking about, well, I wouldn't want to try and do that with the pith in the middle. When I'm turning this stuff green and going thin, so again, I have pictures. I did 3 things shaped similarly to this with poplar. That's the first time I've used poplar. I know it's really soft. I probably won't use it again. I just happened to get a log and wanted to try it. That did not work with this cutter, by the way. And so again, some woods just don't work well with certain types of cutters. This Monroe, it was terrible. This captured system got gummed up constantly. And so I went back to the just plain old carbide cutter with that one. But I want the pith in the middle. So I did a piece, actually this piece, when I cut it out yesterday, I was intrigued about trying to finish this. So this is off of a pretty large maple tree. And so I had cut it in half for bowl blanks. Not this one, actually it's a different piece. I brought a couple in case people wanted to try this out, but one of them is it's out of the tree, but it's still end grained. So it's running the length of the tree, but it's off to the side. It's not with the pith. And I'm worried, I've never turned one like that before, but I'm worried that because of the shrinking being different, that it's probably not going to work. It'll probably crack. So when I do it with the pith in, I probably have turned 100, 150 of these vases with the pith in, and I probably had about 3 or 4 crack like that. It doesn't happen very often. And so if I keep the wall thickness okay, is that a question? No. So, and again, I really goofed up on the whole picture thing because I had about a dozen slides to show you different things. So I also turned them thick and hang them to dry. I don't hang them, I actually have some metal shelving with, it's just racks, and I set them on those racks. So when you do the bowl and you're doing, is it 1 inch or 1 inch thickness for about 10 inches of bowl, I don't know what the ratio should be for those. I usually leave those about 3/4 of an inch thick to a 1/2 inch. And then when I return them, I'm just starting with the outside. I've had some where they've warped, and again, they don't warp that much, so it hasn't been too big of a problem. I've had a couple where I've warped it, or where it warped enough so when I did the outside, I thought, ooh, I probably shouldn't try to mess around with the inside because I was afraid I'd blow it up, but only a couple like that. But I do turn them thick, and one of the things that I've got a couple that I've turned that I'm hoping to use for urns, and those I turn thick to let them dry because there is some warping that happens sometimes, and I don't care because I'm also going to take those thinner wall vessels and probably pierce them and do some carvings and some coloring on them. But yeah, I do leave them thicker. Trying to think of, I should look at my notes and see if there were other things I wanted to cover.
So one of the things I have, and maybe once the Mark Grant comment, but you're talking about the 5-to-1 ratio extension of the tool over the, but the diameter of the bar has a lot to do with how deep the tool is. 6 inches is the maximum you can get with a 5/8 bar, right? Before the bar starts chattering, even though you're controlling it.
Right.
So to get deeper, you need larger bar.
Yeah, I mean, the larger bar is going to give you more stability. And again, if you look at, and I don't know the right technical answer to that, but that 1.25 bar, when I was 17 inches deep in that vessel, there was no bounce, there was no vibration, there was nothing. It was solid as a rock.
And then the other question I have, Joe, is in terms of the torque on the feeling in the handle.
Yep.
A lot of that has to do with the tool design, so that if the cutter is over the center of the diameter of the rod, then there is no torque. Right?
Correct.
That's not determined by how deep you are, how far away from the spindle you are. It's just the tool design that keeps it from being torqued.
Yeah, so I can show you what you're talking about there. So this particular one, this is the John Jordan, and the cutter is pretty close to the center here, right? And when I'm moving the heads on, more on the articulated one because it had more joints in it, but when I'm moving that, I often don't want to get too far out this way. So this is the Benjamin's Best I was telling you about. This is the one I used about 3 times, and every time I used it, I blew. Now that's not much off the center of the tool. Well, it doesn't seem like it is. Or it didn't seem like it to me. Because one little catch with that, and the torque is, I mean, the pull on that is, there's no way to hold on to it. And so, again, yeah, I would say that's accurate in terms of how the tool is designed makes a big difference. The width of the cutter makes a big difference, right? And it's, so this one, I think both of them have the 6 millimeter. Those 6 millimeter cutters are much more forgiving. So if I'm in there with the 10 millimeter, I've done that on the hollowing, on the articulated arm with the 10 millimeter one and caught it. Now, it's not a torque on me, it's just a torque on the system. or the piece. But that 6 millimeter, I don't know that I've ever gotten a catch on that. And again, so what you're using as your cutting tip, whether or not it's sharp, all those things make a difference. So one of the things, and again, so I would say I've only been using this particular system. So after I moved, I didn't get my shop set up at my new house until December. So I've probably only been using this system since January or February. So I've maybe 4 months. It works great on greenwood. And again, I'm getting ribbons on the greenwood that are pretty similar to what I can get with a gouge or bull gouge or something like that. But I wanted to know if it worked on dry wood. So this is a piece of box elder that I did last week with exclusively with this one. I'd had around forever. It was cut up into a square. I couldn't even tell. I mean, I can tell now when I looked at it, but so there was a little natural edge. I thought I would use that, but I went in and I can just pass that around. But so it's pretty thin. I noticed that when I got to the bottom, I got a little thicker. I don't know about you guys, but every piece I make, I have some problem with. I find something I don't like about it. So there are things about this particular piece I'm passing around that I'm not thrilled about. But I use that exclusively with dry wood with this cutter, and it works just fine. I think that's it. I don't know what else. And again, brought a couple. I thought originally when I was going to do this, I would set it up on 2 lathes and then let people try the 2 different systems, the articulated arm and this system, if they wanted to use it, and see what it felt like. But I would say any of them work well, depending on what you're trying to do. And again, so yeah. I do. So I do it different. I'm trying to think now. No, so that one I wouldn't use the jam chuck, but Steve, the advanced lathe tool guy, has some cones that he sells. And so those cones are different shapes. They screw onto the end of your live center. So they screw on here. And so I'm driving those, and I might just put them back on a point. But I have made some things that I use. So I have a hand threaded piece that I took a piece of wood and I threaded it so that it goes on my headstock. And it's got a long pole that I put through the middle. And again, similar system on the end with a piece of foam. And then I'm pushing up against that. But I use probably different for each thing because that has a live edge on it. I probably wouldn't use a jam chuck on that. But I do it different depending on what I'm making. Any other questions? Yep.
Yeah, it just goes in the banjo, and the tool rest is provided in the system.
So you use the tool rest. Your regular tool rest would be here.
No, the hollowing system has in essence the tool rest
Oh, okay.
integrated into it.
Okay.
So the elbow, it all goes in the banjo, and then the tool rest goes through the system and up to the front, and then you have the articulating elbow.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things that, so I found this system by Sinner's system because I was looking for a steady rest, and he makes those. And so I make tools, right? I make tools that I use by hand, and I make my sanding pads and other stuff that I do myself. But every once in a while when it's a big component and I don't feel confident or don't want to take the time. So I was looking around for the steady rests and I got that one. One of the drawbacks of this system, and again, you need the extra piece. or you need something else here to be your steady rest. And again, on the big long bar, I needed something on the back end to hold it up. The other thing I would say is I use a steady rest on anything that I turn probably more than 12 inches. That's probably not true. I've probably gone deeper than that. Steve just put out on his website, so it's advancedlathetools.com. So Advanced Lathe Tools, all one word. He just put out a video on a demo that he did in La Crosse, and it's like from 2014. But I watched that video this week. I gave Steve a call and said, hey, I'm gonna be doing this demo, and he said, oh, I got a new video, check it out. And so I went and looked at it. So he does something really different than I've ever done. So if you see how beefy this is at the end, some of the pictures that I was gonna show you, the width of my base, typically when I'm doing something that's pretty big, before I use the steady rest, even now, I leave it really thick at the bottom. No vibration when I was deep hollowing. Well, Steve turns and uses a little chuck, so a small little one. I don't have an example of that, but I use these big jaws. He's got the small little jaws, and then he turns at the bottom. It's about this big around, and his theory is, I don't need any beef down here. The steady rest is holding it. That's what keeps it stable. It's not going to vibrate because of the steady rest. But if I'm doing the bottom of it, typically match right. Up, but I leave and again, I had some pictures of this, and I'm sorry, but I leave it pretty chunky down in the bottom. Well, in Steve's video, he doesn't. He's bottom base, and I like to get like about a of the widest part, and I don't measure that. That's one of the things I love about wood turning. I don't have to measure anything. Yeah. Yeah, they're tiny little jaws, and he's driving, sometimes really big pieces. But so I leave a lot more bulk in the bottom, and then I'm shaping that after I hollow it out. I'm interested to try what he was doing in terms of being able to shape my bottom at the same time or without that worry. He's doing that on wet wood, and then he hangs his stuff. He anchor seals it, and he hangs it from the ceiling and to let it dry. And he explains in that video, how what that process is.
Cool things he does too is for his steady rest, he puts a wheel track on. So, 2/3 of the way up the piece, he'll have a section about that wide. That's where he runs.
Yep. Yeah, so if you notice on this one, you can see the lines from where I had the steady rest. You can't sand those out. I found that out the hard way too. But so what Jerry's talking about is Steve leaves a strip here, and he makes sure that it's parallel to the lathe, because then when the wheels come down and sit on it, they're there. And then when he's done, he just goes back and cleans that off, that one little strip, so that it blends in with the rest of the vase. But yeah, that was a brilliant idea, and I didn't see that until I watched his video this week either. All right, anybody else with other questions?
How much finishing do you do on the inside as far as sanding?
I don't do a lot. Oh, yeah, so with this, there's also a scraper adapter so I can put the scraper into the bar. I don't know which camera it's looking at, but that scraper then will go out and take out some of that for me. I do some hollowing in it. I would say the deeper I go, the less concerned I am about that. Or depending on what I want to use the piece for. But I do have, so I have sanding sticks that I've created that I have on the tool rest and that are inside there to clean it out too. So I do sand some of them if I want to really get a fine finish in it. Yeah, and that one was just the scraper. I didn't sand on the inside of that. So I used this scraper, the teardrop scraper, to try and get the lines out of that one.